The slam of the kitchen cabinet echoed through the cramped house like a gunshot. "You should be grateful we even let you sleep here." My stepmother's voice sliced through the air, her lips curling into that venomous half-smile she always wore when she wanted me to break. "No one wants you, Ava. Not your father, not us, not anyone." Before we begin, drop a comment and tell us where are you from and from which city you're watching our videos. And after watching the whole video, don't forget to tell us. What would you do in this situation? Be honest. Tell me in the comments below. We read every comment. Let's begin. My fingers froze on the chipped countertop, the mug in my hand trembling so hard that the coffee rippled over the edge and scorched my skin. I didn't even flinch, not because it didn't hurt, but because I refused to give her the satisfaction of seeing me react. From the corner of the kitchen, my stepsister Brooke leaned against the doorway, arms crossed over her designer hoodie, eyes sparkling with cruel amusement. "Don't worry, Mom," she said sweetly. "She'll be gone soon enough. People like her never last." I met her gaze, calm on the outside, while inside my chest a storm raged. They didn't know I'd been up since 4 a.m., working my shift at the diner, scrubbing floors until my knees ached, just to keep enough cash to buy groceries for myself. They didn't care. My stepmother, Sharon, stepped closer, her perfume cloying, expensive, the kind that felt like it didn't belong anywhere near someone like me. She tilted her head, mock concern dripping from her voice. "Honey, maybe it's time you accepted reality. You're 25, living under someone else's roof, working dead-end jobs. If I were you, I'd be embarrassed." Something in my stomach tightened, but I swallowed it down. I'd learned the hard way that arguing with her was like throwing gasoline on an already raging fire. She thrived on control, on making me feel small. But today, something inside me whispered, "Not much longer." Before I could respond, Brooke smirked. "Oh, and Ava, there's laundry piling up in the hallway, and you left your shoes by the door again. We're not your maids." I placed the mug in the sink and turned toward the hallway without a word. My silence seemed to frustrate them more than anything I could say. But as I climbed the narrow staircase to the small guest room I'd been banished to, my mind wasn't on the laundry or the shoes. It was on the email I'd received at 2 a.m., the one that could change everything. By morning, they'd see me differently. The next morning, the house was unusually quiet. Sharon and Brooke were in the living room, sipping coffee, scrolling on their phones, completely ignoring me as I walked toward the front door. That's when I heard it, the deep, low hum of an engine pulling up outside. Through the thin curtains, a sleek black sedan glided to a stop at the curb. Not just any car. This thing looked like it belonged to someone who never had to check their bank account before making a purchase. Sharon's voice floated over, sharp and suspicious. "Expecting someone, Ava? Or is it another one of your little job interviews?" I ignored her and stepped outside. The driver's door opened, and a man in a dark suit stepped out, his posture crisp, his expression unreadable. Without a word, he approached me, opened a leather briefcase, and handed me a thick envelope, heavy in my palm. Sharon appeared in the doorway, Brooke right behind her. "What is that?" she demanded. I didn't answer. My fingers slid under the seal, and as I pulled out the contents, Sharon's sharp inhale filled the air. She saw the letterhead first, and her face drained of color. Her coffee cup slipped from her hand, shattering on the porch. She took a shaky step forward. "Ava, what is this?" The driver stood still, his hands clasped in front of him like a shadow. I let my eyes meet Sharon's, and for the first time in years, I smiled. Cold, steady. "You'll find out soon enough," I said. And then, she dropped to her knees. Sharon's knees hit the porch with a dull thud, the sound almost drowned out by the thumping in my ears. Brooke stood frozen behind her, eyes darting from me to the envelope, like she was trying to calculate just how badly her morning had shifted. "Ava!" Sharon's voice was softer now, stripped of the acid it usually carried. Where did you get this?" I let the silence stretch. The wind tugged at my hair, the sun catching on the embossed gold letters of the document I held, the seal glimmering like something holy, though there was nothing divine about what was coming. The driver stood a few feet away, deliberately impassive, his sunglasses reflecting the whole pathetic tableau. The queen bee on her knees, her spoiled daughter hovering like a frightened shadow, and me, silent, holding the one thing that could flip this house upside down. You need to explain yourself right now. Brooke's voice cracked like a whip. Her faux confidence was already fraying. Is this some scam? Did you steal something? I turned my head slowly toward her, my smile still faint but sharper now. You think I'd risk prison for this? I lifted the papers slightly, letting them see the thick bundle of legal documents and the small velvet box resting on top. Sharon's gaze locked on the box, her mouth opening and closing like she'd forgotten how to form words. No. No, this can't. I stepped past her and walked back inside, my shoes clicking against the worn hardwood floors. They followed like I was leading them into some kind of trial. At the kitchen table, I placed the velvet box down first. Open it, I said quietly. Brooke hesitated, then reached for it. The moment her fingers brushed the fabric, I saw it. The same greed in her eyes. I'd seen every Christmas, every birthday, whenever there was even the faintest hint of something expensive in the room. She flipped the lid. Inside, nestled against black satin, was a key. A small silver key engraved with a single word, Penthouse. Sharon's hand flew to her mouth. Brooke looked at me like I'd just pulled a rabbit out of thin air. What is this supposed to mean? She demanded. Some Airbnb? A joke? I set the papers in front of Sharon. She didn't reach for them. She just stared at the seal, recognition dawning, panic threading into her breathing. These, I said, tapping the top page, are the deed transfer papers for the Hamilton Tower penthouse downtown. You know, the one you've been talking about for years. The one you told everyone at your wine club you'd buy when the time was right. Sharon's eyes snapped up to mine. That's not possible. That unit's mine now, I finished for her. My voice didn't raise. It didn't need to. The weight of the words did the work. The driver cleared his throat. Miss Ava, he said, the car is ready to take you whenever you're ready to see the property. Sharon's composure cracked entirely. Ava, you can't just walk out of here with, I'm not walking out, I said, standing. I'm leaving, and I'm not coming back. Her face blanched. Brooke's mouth hung open. And for the first time since I'd been forced under this roof, I felt the air shift in my lungs, lighter, freer, charged with something dangerously close to joy. But this wasn't the end, not even close, because I hadn't told them how I got it, or what else was coming. The car door shut behind me with a heavy, satisfying click, muffling Sharon's frantic voice as she shouted my name from the porch. I didn't turn back. The driver slid behind the wheel, the leather interior smelling faintly of cedar and something expensive I couldn't place. We pulled away slowly, the quiet hum of the engine a stark contrast to the chaos I'd just left behind. My reflection in the tinted glass stared back at me, calm on the surface, but underneath, every nerve was burning. It had taken months to get here, months of silence, of swallowing my pride, of letting them think they'd broken me. Months of working double shifts, of meeting in quiet corners of coffee shops, of signing my name to documents that didn't make sense until the last piece fell into place. The driver's voice cut through my thoughts. Miss Ava, Mr. Caldwell asked me to deliver the rest of the package once we arrived. My stomach tightened, not with fear, but with the electric thrill of knowing exactly what that meant. We'll go there now, I said. The penthouse sat 30 stories above the city, glass and steel reflecting the morning sun like a crown. As the elevator doors opened, I stepped into a world so far removed from the chipped paint and musty carpets of Sharon's house, it might as well have been another planet. Floor-to-ceiling windows wrapped around the open living space, the skyline sprawling beyond them. On the marble kitchen island lay a black folder. The driver set it in front of me and stepped back. Inside, along with final ownership documents, was a letter. My pulse quickened as I recognized the handwriting. Firm, precise. Ava, you earned this long before I met you. I've simply given you the platform you deserve. Do with it what you will. DC, I traced the initials with my thumb. Daniel Caldwell. I'd met Daniel 6 months ago, purely by accident, or so I thought. He'd come into the diner one night, alone, quiet, wearing a suit that made the neon lights above our cracked counter look cheap. His order was simple: black coffee, no sugar, no cream. But his eyes lingered on me longer than most customers dared. When he left, he tipped more than my weekly paycheck. The next night, he came back. And the next. Slowly, between bites of pie and sips of coffee, I told him pieces of my life. Not all, but enough for him to understand why I kept my guard up. And in return, he told me about people he used to know, people who used their power to crush others, people like Sharon. I didn't know then that he was one of the wealthiest men in the city, or that he'd already started digging into my stepmother's world the moment I told him her name. The driver cleared his throat again, bringing me back to the present. "There's more," he said. From his briefcase, he handed me a small flash drive. "Mr. Caldwell thought you might appreciate this." "What's on it?" I asked, though I already felt my skin prickle. "Security footage," he replied, "from your home." The past 3 months I stared at the drive, my fingers curling around it. If Daniel had gotten his hands on that footage, it meant one thing. Sharon's secrets weren't just whispers anymore. They were evidence, and I knew exactly how to use them. By the time I returned to the car, the city felt different. Bigger. My chest felt different too, not because I'd escaped Sharon's roof, but because I finally had the kind of leverage you can't buy back once it's out in the open. She thought this morning had broken her. She had no idea what was coming tomorrow. By the time I returned to Sharon Street the next morning, word had already begun to spread. 2 neighbors were out front, pretending to trim hedges while openly staring at the sleek black car gliding toward the curb. I saw curtains twitch, phones in hands, mouths moving in quick whispers. Sharon always loved being the center of attention. Today she was about to get it in a way she'd never wanted. The driver parked with deliberate precision. I stepped out, heels clicking against the cracked driveway. My heart was steady, not racing, because the fear was gone now. All that was left was control. Sharon was on the porch, arms folded, Brooke standing a few feet behind her like a nervous shadow. The air between them was tight, brittle. Sharon's hair was perfect, makeup layered heavy to hide the sleepless night I knew she'd had. "You've got some nerve showing up here," she said, voice loud enough for the neighbors to hear. "I don't know what scam you've pulled, Ava, but it ends now." "Scam?" I tilted my head, a small smile tugging at my lips. "You might want to be careful using that word, considering what's on this." I held up the flash drive. Brooke's brow furrowed. Sharon's mask didn't slip. Yet. But the slight stiffening of her posture told me she recognized the danger. I walked up the steps slowly, deliberately. "This little thing holds 3 months' worth of footage from inside this house, from the cameras you didn't know existed." Brooke laughed once, brittle and high-pitched. "Please, what could you possibly— Want me to start with the audio?" I cut her off. My voice stayed low, but the words carried like they were made of glass ready to shatter. "The recordings of you telling Dad that you'd make sure I never saw a cent of his savings? Or maybe the one where Sharon told the insurance adjuster that he'd been too sick to sign the forms, while you used his signature anyway?" Sharon's lips parted, but no sound came out. Her eyes flicked toward the neighbors. I could almost see the calculation in her head, whether to try to shout me down or drag me inside before I could say more. But she stayed frozen. I stepped even closer, lowering my voice so only she could hear. "And then there's the video, Sharon. The one where you told Brooke to accidentally spill wine on my laptop because you thought I had job applications saved there." Her breath hitched, small, but I heard it. And in that moment, I knew she was picturing the fallout. "Why are you doing this?" she whispered, voice trembling for the first time since I'd known her. "Because," I said, straightening, "you made sure I never had a home here, and now I'm making sure you never have the standing you've used to look down on me." I turned to the driver, who handed me a sealed manila envelope. I dropped it onto the porch at her feet. Inside were printed still frames from the footage. Clear, undeniable. "By the end of today, this goes to the board at Dad's company. By tomorrow, the lawyer has it. And by the end of the week," I paused, letting the silence hang, "you'll be lucky if the only thing you lose is this house." Brooke's face had gone pale. Sharon's knees wavered again, the same way they had when I opened that envelope yesterday. But this time, she didn't fall. She just stood there, breathing shallow, eyes locked on me, understanding fully that she had nothing left to say. I stepped back toward the car, but before I got in, I turned one last time. "Oh, and Sharon, you told me no one wanted me." I let the words sink in, slow and deliberate. "Funny thing is, there's a long list of people who want to see you gone." And with that, I left her standing on that porch, surrounded by neighbors who had heard enough to start tearing her reputation apart before dinner. By evening, the city felt electric. The sun had dipped low, painting the skyline in burnt orange and deep blue. But my phone hadn't stopped vibrating all afternoon. Messages, missed calls, voicemails, all from people I hadn't heard from in years, and all of them saying the same thing. Ava, you need to see this. I already knew what this was. The footage was out. Daniel had handled it personally, making sure every piece landed exactly where it would cut deepest. Dad's old company board, Sharon's bridge club, the insurance investigator she thought she'd charmed into ignoring the inconsistencies. By 7 p.m., Sharon's name was circulating through group chats and whispered phone calls like a scandal you couldn't look away from. I didn't plan to go back. Not tonight. But when Daniel called and said, "They're unraveling. If you want your closure, this is the moment," I knew he was right. The car pulled up once again to the house that had never felt like mine. This time, the porch light was off. The curtains were drawn. But I could see movement inside, shadows pacing, frantic. I didn't knock. I walked straight in. Sharon was in the living room, still in the same clothes from this morning, makeup smudged, her phone clutched in one hand like it could save her. Brooke sat on the couch, knees pulled to her chest, scrolling through her phone as if sheer denial could shield her from reality. They both froze when they saw me. "You..." Sharon's voice cracked, raw from hours of talking, or crying. "Do you have any idea what you've done?" I stepped closer, slow, deliberate. "I took the power you stole from me, and I made sure everyone knew who you really are." Brooke shot to her feet. "You ruined us," she spat. "We're finished because of you." I tilted my head. "Finished? No, Brooke. Finished is what you tried to make me when you laughed at me in the kitchen, when you ruined my laptop, when you told me I'd never matter. This is just justice." Sharon's shoulders slumped, her voice dropping to a whisper. "What do you want, Ava? Money? The house? To humiliate me more?" I studied her for a long moment. Her voice had lost that cutting edge, the superiority that had once felt unshakable. And I realized something important. I didn't need more. I already had what mattered. "I don't want your house," I said, my tone calm but firm. "I have my own. I don't want your money. I've earned more than you think. And I don't want to humiliate you further, because you'll do that all on your own." Her eyes flickered with confusion. "Then, why?" I stepped closer, leaning in just enough for her to hear me over the thundering quiet of the room. "Because," I said, "every time you look in the mirror, I want you to remember that the girl you said no one wanted now has everything you thought you could take from her, and you'll never get it back." I left without waiting for her reply. Outside, the night air was sharp and clean. Daniel was leaning against the black sedan, watching me with that steady, knowing gaze. "How does it feel?" he asked. I took a deep breath. The weight I'd carried for years, the quiet shame, the exhaustion from constantly defending my worth, was gone. "Like I can finally breathe," I said. He nodded once, opening the car door for me. As we pulled away, I didn't look back at the house. I didn't need to. That chapter was closed, and for the first time in my life, I wasn't just surviving. I was free.